Hi everyone, this is James and I am here about to conduct this week's Oracle Outlook video readings. I am going to be working with a deck for the upcoming week. On Friday, October 31st, is going to be Halloween, so I am working with a Halloween themed deck. This was a Lenormand deck that was gifted to me some time ago, and I'm working with the Nosferatu Lenormand. This is by a fellow YouTuber named Crohn's Bones, and like I said, she gifted this deck to me some time ago, and I love it. And it is based on the classic black and white vampire movie Nosferatu. It is German, and like I said, 1922, and so I thought it was just a well-executed deck that I like to pull it out around this time of the year specifically to work with it. So I thought I would give my beloved Mitchell Fortune Telling Oracle a vacation this week, although I do have a special edition of the Oracle Outlook planned for Samhain, so stay tuned for that, and that will feature my deck. But in the meantime, deck is on the table. We're going to be doing what we've been doing the last few weeks, and I just want to give a shout out to all of you who really turned out for last week's video. In terms of the likes, I got a number of likes. I got some comments saying that they loved the format, which is actually the way that I started reading Lenormand. So I started reading Lenormand with lines of 5, and I used what I called in that video last week the random method. So we're just going to continue to do that. So we're going to be doing readings again, lines of 5 for 1 for relationships, 1 for money and finance, 1 for work and career, and then the last is going to be a general group collective read. So, first up, love and relationships. Alright, as you can see, we have our line of 5 on the table, and the way this works is that I start with the middle card. So the middle card is going to be considered the heart of the matter or the central issue for the week ahead involving relationships. And so here we have the Stork card. So the Stork is a card that can represent change and improvement. So here we're focusing on how we can change either a particular relationships or relationships generally speaking across the board. How can we change them? How can we improve them? How can we make them better? So the other meaning for the Stork card that I usually work with is expectations. And that's because the Stork, in my frame of reference, can represent deliveries, because it was known for delivering babies to expectant mothers, right? So I play on that for the idea of expectations. So another aspect of this, especially in regards to relationships, is that we're focusing on maybe some certain type or form of expectations. So again, change and improvement, change for the better, expectations. And then the last thing I will say is that maybe in a particular relationship there may be some focus on moving, because the Stork is a card of moving because it is a bird of migration. So I wanted to throw that in the mix as well. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the opening line, or opening card in the line, I should say. Okay, and so here we have cross. And so this would make sense in light of the fact that if the focus is on change and improvement, changing for the better, then here we have cross, and cross is a card that can represent difficulty or burden, right? Or it can also represent something that's critical and necessary. So, right, so in a particular relationship, or again, relationships generally speaking for some people, is that it's critical or necessary for some change for the better or some improvements to be taking place. Now, if it's also about expectations, Stork, then this card can be about responsibility, right? And then when it comes to expectations in a relationship, making it clear on who's responsible for what in a relationship, right? Now another change could be taking place here within a relationship is that this is a card about religion, spirituality, or faith. So there may be a change regarding one's religious tradition, one's spiritual tradition, one's practice of faith that may be playing a role or a part in the relationship. So again, cross, its general meaning can represent difficulty or burden or something being critical or necessary. And as I'm ticking off the meanings in my head, another thing here, and again, this would be about improvement or change for the better with stork, then this card can represent, pain or grief or some kind of suffering, right? So that's what I want to say about cross. Now the card in between the two, here we have tree. Okay, so now I am seeing a story here that makes a lot of sense with the cards on the table. So now if this is about pain and suffering, just like I mentioned, tree is a card about healing. Right? It's a card that's known for health and healing and well-being, right? And so it would make sense here, being between cross, difficulty, burden, pain, suffering, and stork, change for the better, improvement, yeah? So now another thing here is, again, this card can also be about one's spiritual growth and development. And then that would make sense with cross if it's about religion, spirituality, or faith. And then that would be, maybe one party in a relationship is undergoing either a crisis of faith or a change in faith, right? And now if this is about expectations, right, and the burden of responsibility within those expectations, and tree is about having patience, because tree signifies something that takes a long time to grow or develop, because trees take a long time to grow and develop. So if that's the case, then this card is saying in between these two is a need for patience. Now the last thing I will say is that tree can also be about genealogy, something having to do with something being hereditary, or something having to do with extended family. I tend to look at this card about like genealogy, like I said, but also ancestry, right? So there may be a situation for some people that's involving extended family. Now, since this is taking on such a spiritual undercurrent here, these three cards, it can also be about, honor and veneration of one's ancestors, right? That would be those who have moved on, stork, right? And so for someone this week, when it comes to the idea of ancestors and ancestry, that it's important for their ancestors to be honored, or what we call venerated. Right? Or it could be that there's something going on in one's life and they're turning to their ancestors for guidance or assistance. Right? And then that would make sense about cross being about faith and a spiritual tradition. Okay, so that's what I'm seeing with these three cards. Now let's take a look at what's on the other side of stork, starting with this card. And here we have the sun. So now the sun is one of the two best cards in the Lenormand deck, in my opinion. And so it can represent success. So I like it coming after the change and improvement card, stork. Here we have success. It can also be about clarity, illumination, enlightenment, yeah? Now, if somebody is dealing with their relationship, wanting it to change and improve, and there may be something having to do with expectations, tree on this side being about patience, then sun mirroring it is about being patient on the daily, because this card can be about day, something daily, or daylight, yeah? But it can also represent patience with growth and development, which could become successful. So the growth and development process could lead to success, but you still have to be patient. Right now, what's coming to me in the moment too, I talked about migration. I'm seeing here with these two cards the possibility of somebody moving, but also maybe somewhere warmer. I'm seeing the sun being so bright in the image, it makes me feel like, you know, a change of climate, something where it's warmer, a warmer climate, right? Because the sun card can also be about heat. Right, and it could also be that somebody is becoming more aware, enlightened about their ancestry, their genealogy, right? Those people who came before them, right? Because this could also be about family tree. So maybe somebody's doing some research into their background, right? And maybe the process was difficult at first, starting card cross and needing to be patient, but they will become successful in, you know, maybe filling in elements or aspects of the tree. But that's what I'm seeing here with sun. So sun again is about enlightenment, clarity, success. It's about having a positive outlook, a positive attitude. And then the last card here is bouquet. So bouquet is a great card because it can represent something pleasant, something wonderful as things progress and move forward. There's something pleasant, something wonderful, something beautiful. I love the fact that tree and bouquet are here in the same line because this can represent something blossoming, right? It's also a card that can talk about making arrangements, right? I'm playing on the idea of a floral arrangement in the image. So for me, this card can represent making arrangements. But it can also represent a gift or an invitation, an offer, something being presented, or something that comes as a surprise. Right, so whatever the situation is, it's either going to have a beautiful, pleasant, wonderful, or a surprising ending. Right, last card. So that's how I would read the line this week for the topic of love and or relationships. And so now we're going to move on to the next line, which is going to be focusing on money and finance for the week ahead. And I am back once again, and if you picked this line for this week's reading, we're going to be focusing on money and finance. And so I'm going to go ahead and shuffle the cards, then we're going to fan them out. I'm going to pick 5 from the fan, and then we're going to line them up and see what they have to say. Alright, so we have the cards lined up, and so just as I did in the previous reading, I'm going to start with the middle card. This is going to be the heart of the matter or the central issue or focus when it comes to the idea or the topic of love. I said love. I meant money and finance. Okay, and here we have ship. Okay, so ship being the center card, it represents moving forward, it represents progress, advancement. Now, it could also represent an actual venture, right? Or something having to do with something foreign, something overseas, things like that. But in and of itself, it can represent something moving forward or something progressing or advancing. Now, I read with a directional cue when it comes to the ship, so it's going to be very interesting to see because the ship, according to the image here, is moving away from this card and towards this card. So let's see. We're going to move from this card to the opening card here in the line. Okay, so here we have lilies. Lilies is a card that can talk about something old. So it could be, you know, the thing that's opening the line up or the situation up or kicking things off has to do with maybe moving something forward, maybe something that has stalled because lilies is a card that can represent something old or from the past, right? Now, it could also be about something having to do with an older person, because this card, even though you can't see it, it is associated with the King of Spades. And so this card can represent something having to do with an older person, the elderly, someone who's a senior. So that could be like a senior citizen, or someone who, if we're moving this into the space of business, but that would be more my next line, which would be work and career, but somebody who holds a senior position of some kind, right? So again, lilies can represent the past. It can represent something old. So it could be like something from the past that needs to be resolved this week, right? But it can also be about maturation. So maybe something having to do with money and finance that's coming to a sense of maturity, right? Or that we are working towards, right? Maybe with ship going this way, working towards achieving some kind of peace regarding a situation, because lilies for me is a card of peace, right? So that's what I would say about lilies. So now the card in between lilies and ship is the moon card. Okay, so now moon is about honor and recognition, right? It can also be about emotional satisfaction. So that would make sense if I go with the directional cue that I talked about earlier, with ship moving towards the moon. Then this could be about, forward advancement, progression, moving towards a greater sense of emotional satisfaction. And then if I continue that, then that would make sense with lilies being on the side about peace, right? We have emotional satisfaction and then ending with peace and serenity, yeah? But now, it's very interesting. I talked about career. Moon is also the career card in the deck, right? So this card can be about vocation, career, and with that, it can be about recognition. So being recognized within your career. This is a card that can talk about being awarded something or rewarded something. Right? Now, it could also be, if we're talking about money and finance, maybe somebody is returning to something that they did prior when it comes to the idea of work, right? We work to make money. So maybe in that context, this is about somebody who's returning to work. And then lilies is talking about like having experience in that, right? Lilies, it can be about being experienced, right? And that would be the idea, like a pun on the older person, right? Being somebody who's seasoned, right? But this may be somebody who maybe is contemplating a return to maybe a particular type of work they did in the past, something that maybe they were well known for, right? In an effort to bring in some more money. So that's what I'm seeing here. On this side of ship, we have the whip card. Okay, so now the whip card can be a conflict card. It can represent conflict, discord. It can represent something that's being repetitive, right? It can also be about training. If this is taking more of a career type read, then this card can be about being trained, discipline, things of that nature. The other interesting thing to note here is that while this card is about emotional satisfaction and rewards and being honored and awarded something, this card can be the opposite. It can be about punishment, right? So it could be about facing some kind of disciplinary action, right? Now, it could also be if somebody's working on, a return to emotional satisfaction and a sense of peace regarding money and finance, then whip is about getting things cleaned up, right? This is a card about cleaning up something. It's about sorting through things in an attempt to work something out, right? And it could also be for some people, the idea of being disciplined could be saying like this is what needs to be applied to your money situation, right? A greater sense of discipline, right? So that's what I'm seeing here with the whip card. It's about cleaning something up, sorting through something, trying to work something out, but also maybe calling for some sense of discipline. Okay, and so rounding this line out, we have the dog card. Yeah, okay, so here we have something having to do with help, support, assistance, right? It can also be about maybe getting some training with somebody who is a trusted advisor or consultant, right? Or that the person that I was talking to here maybe is going back into work that had to do with giving advice or consulting with other people, right? A dog can represent somebody who's loyal, somebody who's trusted, somebody who's a guide. And again, it can be about help, support, and advice. So that's what I'm seeing with this line. And so now we're going to pick these cards up and we're going to move to the next line for this week. And it's going to center on work and career. All right, and I am back. And if you picked this line reading that I'm about to conduct, we're going to be focusing on work and or career. And so I'm going to go ahead and shuffle the cards, fan them out face down, pick 5, lay them out on the line, and take it from there. Alright, so the cards are laid out, and as I've done in the previous lines, I'm going to go ahead and start with the middle card. And again, we're focusing on what do we need to know regarding work and or career, and I will kind of just broaden that out. In the past, with this particular line, focusing on work and career, I've also suggested if you're picking this line and you're not working, meaning you're not punching the clock or you don't have a business, then you might want to consider this as what you might need to quote unquote work on for the week ahead, or what quote unquote business at hand you need to attend to. Yeah? Okay. So now, middle card. And here we have the man card. Okay, so man in the center. And so this card would suggest that there is going to be a man who's going to play a central role or part in the unfolding of something having to do with work and or career for the week ahead. It reminds me that when I used my deck last week for this line, the man card in my deck also showed up in this. So we have kind of a repeating thing here. So this might be kind of maybe a spillover from last week for some people, right? Going with the idea that this might be the same man who kind of figured prominently in your line last week, right? So maybe you might want to either revisit what was said last week, or just keep that in mind if it's fresh in your mind, depending on when you checked out the reading. If it's fresh in your mind, just keep that in mind as I continue with the reading. So usually the man card doesn't offer any other meaning that it represents a man, but we have a directional cue, right? Because he's facing these two cards and not these two cards. So they can be read one or two ways. Either this would be the past leading up to the present, right? This would be the present leading up to the present, and then he's looking ahead to the future. Or that these are aspects of the work ahead, or the situation revolving around work that he's willing to face and could face easily, even if they're challenging cards. And then this would be what we call inauspicious placement, meaning that because he's not facing these cards, these may be more challenges as the week unfolds, right? Okay, so now let's take a look at the line, or the card opening the line up. And here we have crossroads. So this is about being at a fork in the road and needing to make a choice or decision, right? Now, because he's not facing this card, it could be struggling with needing to make a choice or decision, right? Now, it could be that it involves, what path to go. There may be people who are, facing one or two paths. This could be like career paths, right? Or choices in terms of work or occupation that they could decide from, right? Or it could be maybe even a person who has more than one job, because this card can represent multiples as well. But if it's about choices or decisions, then this card encourages you to look at all your options, all the alternatives, that kind of thing within the situation to make the best decision, right? Now, it could even be, part of the decision could be, should I stay or should I go, right? So it could be that somebody is facing about moving on. I'm noticing in the image that one path is going almost like off the card this way, and the other path is going towards this card. So it's going to be very interesting to see what this card is, right? Because there's a path leading to it, right? But again, crossroads can represent being at a fork in the road, needing to make a choice or decision, and with that, it's about looking at your options, your alternatives. It could also be, looking at two different and distinct paths to move down when it comes to the idea of work or occupation, or even the choice about, should I stay where I'm at or should I move on to something else? So that's what I would say about crossroads. So now let's move on to this card. And here we have mice. Okay, so mice is a card that can represent stress. So that's the first thing I want to say. So, so it could be, if we pair the two cards, it could be a decision that is very stressful. And is it any wonder that these two cards are then behind the man, right? Talking about, inauspicious placement and a challenge. Right? But this card can also be about loss. And it would be gradual loss, something that is decaying or eroding over time. It's not like swift in terms of the eating away process or the decaying process. It's gradual and happens over time. So again, my chief meaning for the mice card is usually stress. So now, let's talk about the path that's leading into the mice card, right? So if this is the case, then it could be a path that is leading to either something being lessened, right? So there could be like the decision to stay in the situation or leave it could be part of the reason why we're considering leaving it would be that it's become really stressful, right? Or that there's something about this path being diminished, right? So it could be a diminishment of one's role, right? Man. But it could also be that something that's eating away or gnawing away at the man, right? Because then pairing these two cards, mice would be modifying the man, which means they'd be describing the man. So this could be a man who is stressed out. But I would look at this as a stressful decision for the man. Okay, and then let's see what he's facing. First card here, he's facing Tower. So now, I love seeing this in a work or career read because the Tower can represent a company, a corporation, a firm, an institution. Right, and it could also be pointing to the man's stress, right? If we mirror the cards, mice and Tower, stress at the company, stress at the corporation, stress at the firm. Or even that the man may be facing the possibility of being laid off, right? This could be gradual loss over time, so there may be a decrease in possibly the workforce. Or that the man has lost a promotion. The Tower can represent promotion, elevated status, moving up, right? That kind of thing. And maybe there's a choice. If there were choices or decisions, like between maybe this man and other parties, then maybe he's seeing maybe his chances of getting a promotion dwindling. But what I'm seeing is that if a man is working for a company, corporation, firm, or even doing freelance work, right, then there may be some great deal of stress for you, my friend, unfortunately, over the course of the week. And you may have to make some choices or decisions on how to move forward with that stressful situation. And then the card at the end, cross. Here we have cross again. We saw this in the very first line, right? So then here we have difficulty, burden, suffering, right? Or being burdened, right? If there's stress here, it could be being burdened with a great deal of responsibility. If we mirror crossroads and cross, here we have multiple responsibilities, or a decision or a choice that needs to be made that is critical and necessary. Right? Or choices and decisions that end in pain, suffering. Right? And then here we have loss, right? So there may be people who are facing layoffs, right? Now, it could also be that there's a man who's playing a central role or part in the layoff process. Yeah? Because then I'm being reminded of, where did I see this? Oh, I know, I saw it. I saw a headline that Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, or Meta, was in the process of laying off like 600 employees. Yeah? So it's making me think of that, you know. So then he would be the man in this particular case, not Mark Zuckerberg in particular, but in a scenario similar to that. This would be the man who is the head or at the top of the company, corporation, or firm, and having to make the decisions, right, that are critical and necessary in the man's eyes, possibly, yeah. And it may even be that there is some choices or decisions regarding a particular regulation, rule, or policy, making something official. That's Tower as well. And then the last thing I will say is that there may be something going on over the course of the week ahead for somebody who works maybe in a spiritual institution, right? Tower would be institution, cross what kind, a religious or spiritual institution, right? And there may be something going on with that. Now, the other thing that could be happening is that, you know, if there's a person who's a clergy person, man and cross, there may be something having to do with his particular either church, temple, mosque, depending on the faith. Maybe there's some stress or decisions needing to be made regarding that. And those choices are either twofold. Either one, they're difficult to make, or they're going to require a lot of faith. If we're talking about a religious person and a spiritual person, right? Needing to have a lot of faith going forward. So that's how I would read this line for the week ahead. And so now we're going to pick the cards up and do our final line for a group, collective, general read. And here we are with the cards on the table once again. And if you picked this particular line, we're going to be exploring a general, group, or collective read for the week ahead. I usually set the intention in my mind for these readings. I just basically ask the question, what do we need to know for the week ahead? What possible situations or experiences could we see unfolding in our lives and moving through over the course of the week? Alright, the cards have been shuffled, cut, dealt, and they're in a line. So once again, we're going to be starting with the card in the middle. This is going to be the heart of the matter, or the central issue or focus regarding the group or the collective over the course of the week ahead. And here we have the man card again. So now here he showed up again, just as he did in the previous line, if you watched that. If not, you might want to go back and watch that. Okay, so what this means here is that there's going to be a man who's playing a central role or part in how things unfold for the collective over the course of the week. If you are a man watching this video, this could pertain to you directly. If you are a woman watching this, then this could be a significant man who is playing a central role or part in your life as it unfolds over the course of this week in terms of a particular situation, right? But again, for the collective, there may be a man who's playing a central issue, role, or part in the unfolding of situations and events over the course of the week. Now, just as I explained in the previous line, what this could mean is that this could be the past. If we read it one way, this would be the past, working its way to the present, the man in the moment, and then this would be the future, right? Or this could be inauspicious placement, which means that these are challenges that the man is going to be either playing a direct role in or directly experiencing, right? And then these would be things that he is looking forward to in his direct experience, or that these are things that could be going forward regarding the man and his presence in terms of his active participation in things as they unfold. Okay? So, opening the line up, we have the heart card. Okay, so the heart can be about love, romance. I'm going to say, since this is a collective read, this could also be about our feelings, right? This is about our feelings, our emotions. It could also be about passion and enthusiasm. So there may be a man who's going to get people in their feelings, so to speak, or there's something people are feeling passionately regarding a man, right? Now, in a more positive sense, too, this could also be a man who's very loving, right? Because the heart card could be describing the man. So this could be somebody who's very emotional, very loving, that kind of thing. Or it could be for some people in the collective that they're going to be focusing on their romances with the men in their lives. Yeah. So there's that. That's what I want to offer. Heart, again, it can be about feelings, emotions, love, romance, relationships, generally speaking, but also things that we are passionate about, things that we are enthusiastic about. Okay, so now the card in between, heart and man, and here we have key. So now key is about answers and solutions, right? This is also about discovery, about revelation. So this is about access. Now, if we're talking about maybe a relationship with a particular man, love and romance, this is about having the key to his heart, yeah? This is about access, gaining entry, yeah? Now, it could also be the converse, right? Keys not only unlock things, but they also lock things, right? So this could be a person who maybe is very unfeeling, right? A locked heart. Right, but I'm feeling like this could be, passion or emotions regarding a discovery, a revelation, some answer or solution, and again, that the man is playing a central role or part in. Now, what's coming to me too, it could be that people are passionate or in their feelings regarding a man who maybe is keeping somebody out. Remember, now this is challenge, right? So maybe keeping somebody out or keeping someone from gaining some kind of access. And then with that in mind, I'm reminded that the playing card association for the heart card is the Jack of Hearts. And so that would be a younger person. The Jack for me in playing cartomancy can be somebody who is of either gender. So this could be male or female person, right? It could also be somebody who's considered favored or the favorite of something, right? And so that may be like going with heart. In addition to that, maybe somebody who's very well loved, very well appreciated. That's all heart. Okay, so that's what I'm seeing here. And then on this side, the man is facing cross. So we have cross. Cross showed up in a number of lines this week, okay? So this is the MVP of this week's Oracle Outlook video readings. And so the man is facing some kind of difficulty, yeah? Facing a burden, right? And again, this could be, if we mirror the cards, this could be the discovery, answer, or solution regarding a difficulty, or the truth about this man's level of responsibility. Remember, cross is also a card about responsibility. And it could also be a person who considers themselves either religious or spiritual, right? Because this would be a religious man or a spiritual man. But also, too, someone who's going to be on the receiving end of grief. Yeah? Getting grief. Remember, this is about passion, emotions, people in their feelings. Yeah? And maybe, interestingly enough, this person being perceived as a religious or spiritual person, but comes across as having a locked heart. Yeah? And then, final card is the bear. Okay, so this would be somebody who's in a position of authority. The bear card for me can represent management, leadership, somebody who's the boss. You know, but it can also be somebody who's the heavy, right? Now, man and bear could describe not necessarily somebody who's in an authority position, or not just somebody who's in an authority, but somebody who's heavy, who has some weight to him. Yeah? It can also be a card about resources, right? Now, it can also be about somebody who's overbearing, right? But in the end, it's also about power and control and force. Right, so now if we mirror the cards, remember this is about feelings, emotions, being in our feelings, being passionate about power, control, force. But the way I'm looking at it, whoever this man is, and I have an idea, but I'm going to leave it to your imagination, yeah? But whoever this man is, he's going to probably, at the end, be forced to do something that he has not been willing to do up to this point in time, because he's going to start getting a lot of grief for it, if he hasn't already. Right? And so that's how I'm going to end this line, and I'm going to end the video here. If you made it to this point in the video, which means that you watched either this particular reading or you watched all four, and if you did, I'm so happy that you did. I want to thank you for the gift of your time. I never take that lightly. So once again, this has been the Oracle Outlook video readings for the week ahead, starting October now I'm filming this on Saturday the 25th, so I had to do the math in my head. So this is going to be starting Monday, October the 27th, up until November the 2nd. Yeah. And so, once again, I was working with a deck that was gifted to me some time ago because it's going to be Halloween this week. Spooky season is here. Yeah. So, I once again worked with the Nosferatu Lenormand. And as I was moving my way through these readings, I realized that I had done a walkthrough of this deck because I was just so touched that Crone's Bones gifted it to me. And surprisingly so. It just showed up on my doorstep one day. I had no idea it was coming. Right? A very bouquet moment if you're following Lenormand, yeah? So it was a surprise and a gift, right? And so I did a walkthrough because I wanted people to see the deck because I just loved it that much, right? And so I'm going to make a point to put that link to the video of that walkthrough in the description box below. So again, James Himm Mitchell signing off. Thank you so much for giving me the gift of your time, and I look forward to seeing you in this space for our next Oracle Outlook video reading together. So until then, take care, be well, and have a great week.